Hello, everyone. I think we have the last panel of the day. It's been a fantastic event this afternoon. Thank you to the organizers, Rosie et al. I'm here with Leigh and another Jason. It's a great name. Yeah. In case you're thinking of naming your kids anything, Jason's definitely in vogue. Yeah. But in the interest of time, I'm going to ask them to quickly introduce themselves. We're going to have one question about venture in London and why it's such a great place, and then go to Q&A. So, Jason?
I'm Jason Pontin. I'm one of the general partners at DCVC, the lead investor in relation, but also an investor in a number of other TechBio companies here today, Recursion and Micrographia. I've been at DCVC for 4 or 5 years. Before that, I was at Flagship for 3 years, and before that, I worked at MIT for 15 years.
Fantastic. Leigh Brody, investment manager at Albion. I work on 2 funds. One is the UCL Technology Fund, and one is AlbionVC, where we focus on TechBio, a lot of it. As a background, I'm a biochemist by training. I moved over here quite a long time ago, even though my accent does not give that away, and started my first company out of my PhD, and realized how tough that was, and have continued to stay here to repeat that. I started another company. I've been in a few operational spaces, and now moving in a fund where I build companies out of universities.
Thanks, Leigh. So the question is, of all the places in all the world, why London for venture capital? Why be here? Why build here?
Well, I am the guy to ask because I was born here, grew up in Northern California, worked in Silicon Valley for 10 years, then in Kendall Square for 17, and moved back here 2 years ago. So my big message to the folks in this room is you already have a TechBio hub, and it is awesome. And what makes it so awesome is the talent in this room and elsewhere, which uniquely combines machine learning talent in a non-religious, non-ideological way, willing to go and use a variety of different techniques with real biological insight. And that is super exciting and makes me keen to invest in the area.
Excellent. Leigh, your thoughts?
I think Jason and I have like the perfect opposite experiences. Like obviously I was born in North America, but I think, London, the way I see it, is like its own closed loop. Yeah. We have like this amazing academic resource with incredible labs doing incredible work. We have the hospitals across the street that are treating the patients that the drugs are being developed down the road. We have manufacturing in between that, and we have the investors that are actually funding some of this work being done. So I think when I first came here, thinking, okay, what does innovation look like? How does the space look like? And that was like a journey in itself. And anyone who's done that from academia knows that is a lot of scar tissue. And my second company was like TechBio before TechBio term existed. And what I found is that I would speak to kind of tech investors and then speak to biology investors. I had separate investment decks. I had different numbers. Don't say that to anyone. But there was a language that people in between did not speak. And I thought, okay, here is a hole where there is some great talent in London, but like not enough of that kind of in-between ecosystem, in particular in the investment space. And I think that's why, and like I keep kind of reinventing myself, and that's why I'm like, okay, London, TechBio Hub, like it's all here. It just needs like a little crosstalk. So I think London itself today is, miles from where it was 10, 15 years ago, and I do see it as like, the next wave. And that's why people continue to ask me, like, why am I still, are you going to move to the States? What are you doing? And like there's so much potential. Why would I leave, right? And I think today is a perfect showcase of that.
Now, I know we're going to go and take questions from the audience, but one thing to note is that the much maligned National Health Service is part of what makes this such an extraordinary tech center. DCVC's thesis in investing in TechBio is the lab in the loop, which relation and recursion are the leading examples. Being able to go and develop foundation models trained on real human data, and then to test those hypotheses in actual human cells would not be possible at the scale that we do anywhere else in the world. And that's because of the biobanks that are associated with the national health. I couldn't have worked on relation in any other place but here in the UK. Now, I spent half my time in California, and we do invest in a whole bunch of great Californian companies. But for life sciences, and I spent 17 years in Kendall Square, forgive me, Luke, I still think that London has a number of advantages that could accelerate it beyond the orbit of Kendall Square.
too right. And on that note, look out, Kindle Square, here we come. Okay, who's got a question? Real quick. Oh, God, this is an opportunity. I'm going to ask another one if you don't. So what are you looking at that's really exciting you right
Jason,
now?
there was a hand.
Oh, perfect. Oh, right here.
Question on digital twins. Are you okay? Thank you. From an investment perspective, you heard of the TechBio is focusing on optimizing this small slither in drug development. Are you actually looking at a larger picture and actually saying, eventually, if you want to have successful drug development, you need more in silico hard data, which is still lacking, and being able to have digital twins, startup companies that are able to answer that question?
So we're the lead investor also in Unlearn.ai in the US. So we are big fans of digital twins. There are regulatory challenges about what you can and cannot do with them, but if they could simply accelerate the process in meaningful ways, I think that's a huge success in its own right.
Data sharing and regulation, I think those are the two biggest hurdles, but I think it's a really exciting space that a lot of people are watching.
Excellent. Hands up. Next question. In the back?
Thanks very much. It was really interesting to hear at the beginning of the day David Robin talking about use case and access to samples. So I thought we'd be talking about the amazingness of his tech. So it'd be great to hear your views. Is the tech still differentiating, or is it the use case and the network? You mentioned the NHS.
Well, it is both, though access to samples is key. But what's unique about London is what Rosie was talking about, which is the conversations that engineers have with the biologists in order to create a new common culture, to use the tools to ask the questions that scientists want to answer. And those questions are asked in the context of being actually have samples to work with.
Any thoughts?
No, I agree.
Well
John
said.
David, yeah.
Said. Next question.
Yeah, you heard it all. Yeah.
Well said.
Hi, thank you so much for your commentary so far. I'm just curious, all of you working in venture, you'll have a pretty good bird's eye perspective on the industry. What is exciting you most at the moment, whether that's in terms of modality, disease, space, like you pick, just tell me what excites you right now, what we should all be looking at.
Oh, I mean, everything. I think a few exciting things are, this like TechBio bubble, which a lot of companies started to come out of the woodwork maybe about like 4 or 5 years ago. I think we're starting to see kind of the second generation that really have gotten the great kind of balance of talent in the beginning. And I think it was, if you're thinking about a company that's either has a platform that's going to develop assets or a platform for itself as more of like a SaaS or service or like solving some sort of kind of data problem, I think some of the earlier companies didn't have it right of having a mixed talent at the beginning, whereas I think now they've got they've had a much clearer understanding of kind of what you need at the beginning. And so I think kind of some of these new companies out are, I think the focus is better. I think the talent at the beginning is better. And I think the resourcing that they understand that they need, I think is better. And also some of the valuations have changed. So I think as a whole, I think that's my excitement. But I think from disease or modality, kind of, I think there's potential everywhere, right? There's a lot of solutions that we need cures for.
So let me answer the question broadly, and then I'll give 2 specific use cases. I think generally we've plucked all the low-hanging fruit, or at least been frustrated by our inability to pluck the low-hanging fruit for monogenic disease and simple mutations like cancers. And the next stage is to work on exactly the problems that relation and recursion are working on, these complex multigenic or polygenic diseases. Specifically, I'm interested in the second generation of gene therapy companies, often using novel vectors. And I haven't yet given up on anti-aging science. It has a number of problems. No FDA-recognized endpoint, a whole bunch of quacks working in the space. But I think if you approached the area with the same intention that traditional drug discovery has, looking for novel drug targets and then testing them, I think you might actually make some progress at last. So there are a number of companies working in this space, and I'm still interested in anti-aging. Put me in an ICU, and everyone has something in common.
This is why we look
They're
20
all
years
old.
younger than our actual
That's right.
age.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Case in point here. So take away from that intentionality and no quacks.
Yeah,
right?
no quacks.
Big take home. Over there? Let me get a mic.
Hi, Super from Flagship Pioneering, one of your alma maters. We're very excited about the scientific talent here.
Everything I know, I learned from Nubar. Nubar taught me everything.
So the question is, where do you see the sweet spot in terms of supporting the great science in the UK? Is it at the origination and ideation, getting the what if, the grand vision, or is it the early entrepreneuring, or is it the scale up? Or how can we help if help is needed?
Well, I think your recent announcement with the Cambridge Alliance in collaboration is a great start. So thanks to Flagship on that one. I think it's a magnitude of things. I think it's both like curating that culture, which is what we talked about earlier in the panel, and I think some of the things that's helped that are like some of the recent accelerators that have started in London, and I think more people starting companies and talking about it internally. I mean, part of my job is to go into labs and departments and say, okay, who's going to start a company out of your idea, and like let's talk about how that works. And so I think that awareness, it helps. So I think early stage support about curation of ideas from academic into industry. I think the other thing that can help is just more capital here and more investing at B, C rounds. I think there's a few pieces that really do need support that could help, and Flagship can contribute to that very well, I'm sure.
So Nubar Fain, the founder of Flagship, often says that you should ask the what if question. Don't say that something is impossible, but ask what if it were possible. London doesn't lack for that at all, but I think it does lack what in deep tech we call the missing middle of funding. So there's plenty of people who can do seed, Series A, but around Series B and Series C it becomes a little bit thin on the ground here. I think the other thing which I would say to British scientists and entrepreneurs, the one thing that I do miss here, having lived in both countries, is failure's fine. You need to adapt a degree of comfort with failure. If you're not failing, and if your organization and culture doesn't accept a degree of failure, you're not trying hard enough. But the failure needs to be done rapidly and with a sense of urgency, and you need to learn from your failures. That is still Silicon Valley's superpower, that not only comfort, but that celebration of failure. London needs a bit more of that.
I think that's an excellent point. Failure is the first attempt in learning. Fail. Yes. I love a good acronym. Yeah. Take that home. We have time for one more question. Over here, Maya.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question actually around, I think there's a lot of narrative recently around China and how there's a lot of growth, not just necessarily on the manufacturing or generic side, but in actual R&D. And I think a lot of the conversation focuses on the US innovation versus China and how they're going to compete. So I'm kind of wondering around how does the UK even fit into that? Could be this big biotech arms race almost. How can the UK and London as a biotech hub maintain its competitive edge, especially in sort of early stage innovation and R&D?
Do you want to take that first?
Well, I'll try. Economists talk about comparative advantage between nations. The UK cannot nor should try to do everything, but that marriage of frontier machine learning models with high fidelity biology plus chemistry is a thing where I think this country genuinely could be a global leader. It is probably likely that the UK will never be a major manufacturing center again, and that's maybe okay, but what the people in this room do, the frontier of discovery and translating that into life-changing medicines and other deep tech innovations, London can do that, and the UK can do that as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I think we just need to lean into our strengths, right? And we've got plenty. So, I think more competition is healthy, but we've got a lot of power here. So.
Excellent. We're going to call it there. Thank you to our incredible panel, and thank you everyone for your questions.
Fly safe.
Yes, thank you.